देश के दुश्मनों ने भी देख लिया, जब सिंदूर बारूद बन जाता है तो नतीजा क्या होता है।
"2:30 a.m., May 10, 2025. A single phone call shatters the uneasy silence of Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif's residence in Islamabad. The army chief is on the line, his voice uncharacteristically grim. "Janab, Chaklala has been hit.
नौ और 10 की दरमियानी रात में तकरीबन 2:30 बजे सिपा सलार जनरल सैयद आसिम मुनीर ने मुझे सिक्योर फोन पे मुझे बताया कि वज़ीर-ए-आज़म साहब, हिंदुस्तान ने अपने बैलिस्टिक मिसाइल अभी लॉन्च किए हैं, एक नूर खान एयरपोर्ट पे गिरा है और कुछ और दूसरे इलाकों में गिरे हैं।
Noor Khan Air Base, Pakistan's most prestigious air facility, was burning. Not just a symbolic strike, it was surgical and devastating. India had done what was unthinkable.
You know, it was building up. After the atrocity on 22nd April in Pahalgam, I think like everybody else, I was also sure that there will be an Indian reaction.
But the symbolic nature of hitting Noor Khan, and the second was Sargodha, while others are tactical operational bases, but these two are strategic bases, right? In terms of proximity to Rawalpindi,
that the bases have been struck with such precision and such across Pakistan in terms of numbers, in terms of geographical spread, and in terms of strategic importance of some of the bases. That is what was, game-changing.
Noor Khan Air Base, home to Pakistan's VIP transport fleet, intelligence assets and elite air units. For decades, this installation stood untouched, sheltered behind the red lines of nuclear deterrence. But Operation Sindoor has redefined those lines. What began as a bold strike on terror camps now looked unmistakably like a direct message to Rawalpindi.
Let me put this into perspective. For us, experienced anchors who have covered conflicts, this was uncharted territory. This was territory that really rewrote nuclear doctrine or the engagement between nuclear powers. It was rewritten because a message had been sent to a state sponsoring terror, a nuclear tipped state, that we are not going to be held to by your nuclear blackmail. We were witnessing history as we were covering one of the biggest stories in a decade. Now, while speaking to a host of experts, it was becoming very clear to us, apparent, that India had pummeled Pakistan into submission.
It certainly caught the world by surprise. And they will have to take notice because it's been demonstrated on the ground that any act of terror will be treated as almost like an act of war and that will be retaliated to. So this is now the new normal.
And West needs to particularly see this because they've been arming Pakistan and now China is arming them. So the world needs to take notice. If they are serious about terrorism, they need to take notice of epicenter of terrorism and take their action strongly.
even the mightiest military in the world, when it has to carry out strike at 11 disparate, geographically separated areas, and thereafter carry out a hit which succeeds, has never happened before.
As the night of May 9th faded into the early hours of May 10th, something extraordinary happened. Something no military strategist in Islamabad had prepared for. Indian air power, relentless and unyielding, descended again.
I think when the strikes went on to the 11 airfields at the same time, that was one time their entire political military structure would have actually crumbled.
They tried their best. The lack of damage on our side is ample proof that how strong our air defense was, how well we were integrated in our overall capability to defend.
First came the wave that struck Noor Khan, but it didn't end there. Within hours, Pakistan's prized military infrastructure was under a coordinated aerial siege. Murid, Rafiqi, Sargodha. Bases that hadn't seen combat since 1971 were now being pounded with precision munitions. The unspoken pact that air bases were sacrosanct was now rubber.
News is coming in thick and fast. Pakistan-occupied Kashmir as well as inside Pakistan have been struck. 9 different locations have been targeted by the Indian Army.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Each of the scalp and hammer bombs locked in on their unsuspecting quarry.
We have targeted the length and breadth of the adversary.
We will not submit to nuclear blackmail anymore, and that we will not make a distinction between terrorists and their sponsors. So if there's a terrorist attack, we will treat it as coming from the Pakistan government and the Pakistani state authorities. So these are all new doctrinal elements, the Indian policy, which the world has to get up and take notice and accept, because we have demonstrated it on the ground.
In terms of what it did to the doctrine, I think firstly it is a very restrained action on our part. Okay, it wasn't, if we were building for a convention conflict, what we did on 10th morning we would have done on 8th.
In Islamabad, the mood turned from concern to dread. Prime Minister Sharif, bleary-eyed, entered a national security briefing at 4 a.m. Reports kept pouring in, one after the other. Pak bases pounded. A dozen sites targeted with clinical coordination. For the first time since the 1971 war, Pakistan's air capabilities exposed hollow. The army chief admitted what the intelligence couldn't hide. This was no limited skirmish. It was a campaign of dominance. Pakistan's airspace was no longer a shield.
There was no denying that Bharat had humiliated the Pakistani forces. It became very clear to us from the satellite images that we accessed following the attacks that the Pakistani side virtually pleaded with the Indian DGMO to call off the strikes. General Asim Munir's gambit had failed. Now, had he got the option of going back in time and stop one of the most dastardly attacks on Indian soil, perhaps he would have.
So while they have been trying for 4 years to do something, but this one misstep or maybe an attempt to overreach has cost them a certain degree of, has backfired on them. But the moment it's backfired, where have they gone? They went running to Uncle Sam.
And though this is as clear a signal as ever, that if you indulge in something like this, next time around the consequences will be even more devastating. So they need to pull back from the brink. I don't think so they will.
May 7, 1 a.m. Operation Sindoor begins. Indian jets evading radar, navigating valleys and hostile airspace. 9 terror hubs deep inside Pakistan. Bahawalpur, Muridke, Muzaffarabad, Bhimbar, Gulpur, Sialkot, Chakamru, Kotli and Bagh are surgically targeted. The objective is to dismantle the infrastructure of cross-border terrorism with ruthless precision.
So for 2 weeks after the Pahalgam attacks, we were kind of anticipating this moment. We had fielded contingency teams. These were our first responders who were going to respond to the breaking news in case something happened overnight. But what followed was unimaginable. I mean, for all the talk about the proof that opposition was asking for after the Balakot strikes, for example, this particular attack left absolutely no room of doubt. Within minutes, and I still clearly, vividly remember this, the first visuals that we got of that stunning strike was from Bahawalpur, which was the headquarters of the Jaish-e-Mohammed. It sort of broke the back of this terror group. Those, to my mind, were really the defining images of that night.
In less than 40 minutes, multiple terror launch pads lie in ruin. But this wasn't merely retribution for the Pahalgam terror attack. It was a calculated shift in India's rules of engagement. This wasn't Jabbar Top Balakot. This was broader, bolder, bloodier.
Till their drones came, started attacking, till their loitering munitions started attacking, initially a very restrained reaction was given in terms of just attacking their radars close to the border. When on the second night more attacks were undertaken, then some more air defense radars were attacked. It is only when our airfields were stuck. So look at the kind of restraint that was exercised.
What people don't understand is the escalation control. Something impossible to achieve. This escalation control which the political military establishment of our country has been able to achieve is something even I am surprised, having war gamed this so many times.
India's strategic and military resolve is boldly declared to the world. Operation Sindoor gets a new dimension with its press briefing. Colonel Sophia Qureshi, Wing Commander Vyomika Singh are chosen by India to tell the world. India strikes the heart of Pak-backed terror. The proof is there for the world to see.
ऑपरेशन सिंदूर 22 अप्रैल को पहलगाम में हुए विभत्स आतंकवादी हमले के शिकार मासूम नागरिकों व उनके परिवारों को न्याय देने के लिए लॉन्च किया गया था। इस कार्रवाई में 9 टेररिस्ट कैंप्स को टारगेट किया गया और पूरी तरह से इसे बर्बाद किया गया।
22nd April 2025, Pahalgam, a place known for its natural beauty, became a graveyard of innocence. "26 Indians were killed in cold blood. They were targeted not just for being Indian, but for their faith. It wasn't an attack. It was a message, and New Delhi heard it loud and clear."
For us covering the power corridors of New Delhi, we immediately recognized a pattern. This attack came right in the middle of American Vice President J.D. Vance's visit to India. There have been other attacks when American dignitaries visited India, but this was something we hadn't imagined. Knowing how this Indian government always responds to crisis, we knew that Prime Minister Narendra Modi was already planning his next moves from Jeddah, where he was on a state visit. We soon learned that the Prime Minister was cutting short his foreign visit and rushing back to India.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi cut short his visit, returned to India from Saudi Arabia within hours. By dawn, the Cabinet Committee on Security had convened in South Block. Decisions that are often whispered in the corridors of power were now being taken aloud. Home Minister Amit Shah was dispatched immediately to Srinagar and Pahalgam on the very day of the attack. India was not just mourning. It